We're live. Hello, guys. Here is your favorite pseudo-intellectual, as anointed by His Grace, the Almighty Pontiff, Archibald Chesterfield III. I'm Lord Hellespont V, here with you to present on one of the most interesting characters in the Archiverse. There's this cheesy slogan that USA Network had at some point, characters welcome. And clearly that was before YouTube, and they hadn't seen anything yet of the Watch YouTube. And honestly, among all that cast of characters, Big Meech, Joe, Big Mac, Joe Farmer, he's a very special person. I really appreciate his presence. I appreciate his sense of humor. And to me, he reminds me of this scene in my favorite Batman movie where Bruce Wayne walks into this fancy costume party and he doesn't even bother to hold up a mask to his face. And when Selena Kyle asks him, "So who are you supposed to be?" he says, "Bruce Wayne, the eccentric billionaire." So here we have Big Meech, the eccentric millionaire, and we will try to probe and prod into the mask and see what lurks just behind the mask, just below the surface. Big Meech, welcome. Welcome to the channel.
Happy to be here, Lord. Happy to be a guest here and graced with your presence.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. So you see already from this presentation, all I asked Joe was to share a few pictures with me, and this is among them. And you can see in the presentation already that this is a man of taste. You see how the label of the blend is reflected in the watch box, how that rust of the Alcantara plays off the dark amber of the whiskey itself. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. And maybe that little bit of the sign there, the Sopranos name, gives us a glimpse of what is to come, what is yet to be added to the collection. So we'll talk about that as well towards the end. But I just wanted to start with this before I jump in and focus on any specific watches. That is a superb half a dozen, 6 watch collection. Great. And you see his particular attachment as well, of course, to one among them. Let's start. Joe, tell me a little bit about this watch.
Yes, the Explorer, the one that kind of started it all, to be honest with you. So to give a little deeper in-depth backstory, I didn't start getting serious about watches until I started getting into car sales. I'd always kind of tinkered with watches, but never gotten officially serious. And when I got into car sales, my sales manager was wearing a No Date Sub, 40 mil, 2018 model. And the backstory behind his was basically it was on his bucket list, and he just had a good year that year, and he bought a Sub in 2018. I joined the car sales team probably around 2019, late 2019. But that's neither here nor there. Anyways, we kind of struck up a conversation about talking with watches and whatnot. And he said, "Man," he said, "you got to get yourself a Rolex." He said, "You got to stop spending money at the clubs and on liquor and booze." He said, "You got to get yourself a proper watch if you're going to be here." So we kind of skip forward here, and I remember I was in my Citizens AD, and I said, one of my dreams is to get a Rolex here. And they said, "Oh, we can get you a Rolex." I said, can you? He said, "Yeah." He said, "It's going to be pre-owned or whatnot." I said, "No, I'd really like my new." And he said, "Well, if you want a new Rolex, there's a boutique here in town." And I'm like a fisherman. Once I find a good boutique, I never reveal the name. So I'm just going to call it X Boutique. And so I walked in, and this was at the time where Rolex hadn't quite taken off yet. So they had the Explorer in the display case. They had the Z Blue. They had the Black Dial Milgauss. They had the Oyster Perpetual 39, which at the time was actually a great steal because they offered me it $6,300 off the door. In hindsight, I probably should have taken it as well. But I settled on the Explorer. I thought it was just one. It was in my price range at the time. I didn't want to go over 10 grand. I got a substantial discount on it. I got $1,500 knocked off it. It was my first Rolex. Admittedly, probably at the time the dog of the collection when you consider everything Rolex. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting watch because my buying experience was actually horseshit with them the first time around. They just assumed I couldn't pay for it. I just didn't belong there. And then I asked them if they could do a split payment, half cash, half card. And when I came in to do the deal that day, I dropped the cash down, and they took it, and then they wrote up the paperwork, and then they gave me a folder and said, "All right, have a nice day." And they started walking away. I said, "Where are you going?" I'm buying the watch today. And they said, "Oh, we didn't realize that you were going to do this today." Which maybe I'm overthinking that, but I found that to be quite insulting, honestly.
Sure.
But nonetheless, this was my first Rolex, and it's been with me through a lot. Actually, it's been with me through a lot. I don't wear it as much now, which is kind of unfortunate, but I still like it. It's my first Rolex. I'd have a tough time selling it because it also went out to South Dakota with me and my father. So
yeah, please don't.
Yeah.
There are a few things I want to say. One, of course, in a more general sense, it reminds us of a time where you could, first of all, find real watches that you could buy in the display case at the Rolex AD, where you could get a discount, and where you could give you even a payment plan of sorts. All of these options that made Rolex so much more available and accessible to a larger number of people, which is something I actually associate with the heritage of the brand more than the flexing, more than the flashiness, more than its ability to simply etch its brand name in everyone's brain cells. So I really appreciate that story, but more importantly, I like the fact that the pontiff statement, "Every man has to have a Rolex," has a universal application, that your manager basically implored you to get one. And you got a watch that has an impeccable heritage, yet it's not the most predictable, right? In the contemporary line, even though Explorer should ideally stand right next to the Submariner as one of the most iconic models, it somehow stands apart. And like you said, at certain moments, it was one of the least preferred models, especially in 36 millimeters. But of course, you got it in proper big boy size.
Exactly. I got the men's size 39.
Yeah, I love it. I hope you never sell it. I hope that day doesn't come for one reason or another. I think this is a great watch for you. Wear it in good health and wealth, my friend. Next up for me is this beauty. What do you think?
Yeah, the Z Blue. So the Z Blue is an interesting one, and kind of one that I got a second chance at. So, like I just stated, when I first went into Rolex, I did get a chance to hold the Z Blue, and initially, I thought it was very awkward. It was heavy. Admittedly, I think I even called it ugly in front of the girls. And I said, no, I'm just not in the market for it. And I've said this in the past. I just didn't know what the hell I was looking at the time, and didn't realize how special it kind of is. It's a quirky watch. It's Rolex being absolutely out of its comfort zone. And I kind of put it on my wish list, I guess, and I totally forgot about it. So one day I'm sitting in the Dairy Queen drive-through, and I get a phone call from my boutique, and keep in mind I'm like literally at the window, handing my cash over, telling them, they ask me, do you want straws, do you want napkins, and I'm trying to hold a conversation with my rep at the same time. She said, yeah, we're curious if you still want the milk. We just got one in. And at the same time, the kid asked me, like, oh, do you want an extra straw? And I said no. And she said, you don't want it? And I said, no. And I said, I'm at the drive-thru right now. I said, I want the Milgauss. I want it. And meanwhile, the kid's looking at me like I'm insane or whatever. But long story short, I said, yeah, I'll take it. And before he hung up, I said, out of curiosity, I said, I'm taking it regardless. But I said, what's the dial color? And she said, oh, we got you the Z Blue. It's the better one of the two. And I'm like, oh yeah, drop everything and run. It was only a 30-minute drive for me to get to my boutique, and it was a very interesting one and a very special one because it was actually kind of funny as well. Because I walked in and my sales rep, she brought out the watch and set it on the table and she said, just so we're clear, and there's no misunderstanding, we got this. We're giving you this watch because we just thought of you. We like you. Not because you gave us wine yesterday, because I bought wine for the whole staff yesterday, just as a general thank you, because they put up with my annoying ass at the time. I'm in there. I swear to God, I should just move in. But so that was clarified right up on the spot. Saying we're just giving you this because we like you, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I wear it as a daily beater, even though I probably shouldn't. But it's a nice watch. I'm glad I got a second chance at it.
I love the. I guess they were introduced themselves, your girls, as you call them, to the psychological depth of the character Big Meech. Because on the one hand, you said, this is an ugly watch. And then on the phone, you were desperate to say, I want it.
Yeah, absolutely. How the turntables.
Look, we are talking about girls and horology. It's easy to make the ladies fall in love with what's most beautiful and what's most attractive about you. And that can be just about anything. But if you can make them fall in love with your imperfections, like an ugly duckling, such as this one, the Milgauss, then you have a real winner, and then you have a real keeper in your hands. So I think this is a watch that has a lot of character. Of course, the blue dial is very special, and the way it is kind of a chameleon, really, because of that particular crystal, even adds to the intrigue of this watch. Again, it's unpredictable. On the one hand, you can say it's Rolex. It's very predictable. It's exactly what you expect someone like Joe to get. On the other hand, once again, you veered off the well-beaten path and made something your own. On that note, can we have a quick wrist watch check from you, Joe?
What am I wearing? What am I wearing? Boy, the Millie. How does that do? Yeah, the Millie. Guys, I gotta be honest, guys. I really do like it. I quite like it.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, I swear this is not scripted. Well, it's as scripted as anything that happens in this virtual space. But
yeah, Lord gave me the script about a day earlier, guys. So this is all rehearsed.
And I'm wearing the reverse mandate, the Pontiff signature model on the Casa Fagliano canvas.
Ooh, I actually like that strap combination. Yeah. I actually do. It's very laid back. It's relaxed.
Yeah, very, very nice. Kind of brings the sportier aspects of the watch out. Again, I completely agree with you. It is a steel stunner, but it's not a sports watch. Not anymore. Not since the Second World War broke out, I guess.
But, hey, who knows? Maybe it can make a comeback in the Third World War.
Exactly. That's why our next watch will be once again presenting you as an honorable member of the Reverso squad. So this is, we're all desperate in the Archieverse to hype up this little watch, this odd rectangular shape, which has in its way a lot of horological appeal, a lot of intrigue, a lot of interest. What made you get a Reverso, John?
So the reversal was it was always in the cards, but never really on deck. Until I started watching the series Boardwalk Empire, and I've said this before, but the Boardwalk Empire is based in the 20s during Prohibition, the Capone era, Charlie Luciano. So a lot of the styles is men wearing suits, and of course the wealthier gangsters would be seen wearing these tanks, things of that nature. And I thought, you know what? I think it looks good. And I was in the process of rebuilding my wardrobe, and still am. And I started wearing more suits and more polos more frequently. And I figured, you know what? I think it's time to get the reversal. I think it's a classy combination. It's iconic, and it looks good in the suit, no doubt about it. So I went up to my JLC AD all the way up in the Twin Cities, because I think we've stated this before. You have to try it on. You cannot buy these on site, or on scene, I should say, because they're such a tricky watch to get sized. Now, admittedly, you could probably argue I bought the lady size on this one because I have twigs for wrists, but for one and done dress watch, I think this is perfect for what I need, and it's just a classy rendition. And I get some fairly interesting looks when I flip it around to check the time and whatnot. So
It's look, I mean, this is a watch that I have adored maybe more than a decade from a distance. But if I hadn't come across the enthusiasm, the excitement, the adoration with which Archie talks about this watch, I don't think I would have ever gone out of my way to try it on, to seek the best examples, to look at all these different models and different sizes and different complications. And like you said, this is not a watch that you buy on a whim. This is not a watch that you should ever buy sight unseen. This cannot be an impulse purchase, and in that way that it really reflects part of the spirit of the watch, because this is a considerate man's watch. This is the watch of a person who likes contemplating, who at least takes a step back to think a little more carefully about his decisions and not be impulsive. And I know sometimes we think of Meech otherwise, but I think the fact that he has a Reverso tells me that he has something much, much deeper than this impulsive, high-rolling, gentleman's club loving gentleman that we see often. So I love seeing this watch. And again, it comes in all sorts of different complications, in different sizes, but you have to find the one that's right for you, that looks good on you, that speaks to you. And a two-hander with seconds on the subdial, with a plain case back that could become a blank canvas for a personalization project, I think it's just a very special watch. And one thing I will say about the older models, unlike the newer tributes, I don't think I will ever forget JLC for basically getting rid of this engine-turned, perlage decorated carriage. Right now they have kind of a sun ray design emanating from one side of the carriage instead of these engine turn decorations, which I think make the watch a little too dressy and too, I think, too square than I like. I don't know what you think, Joe. What do you think?
Right. No, and I agree because I mean, I remember, so Marco and JJ and those who've been around me enough know that I absolutely hated this watch when I first got it. Because I remember telling Marco, it's a one-trick pony. You cannot use it as a sports watch. You cannot use it as a casual watch, at least from my opinion. It's strictly a dress watch. That is what it is. It's a DNA built-in, strictly a dress watch. And it frustrated me because at the time, I just didn't have the wardrobe. And I'm not saying I have the wardrobe now, but it's a little bit more manageable. But it's a watch that you cannot just wear casually. And its DNA is just strictly a dress watch in my humble opinion. Now, with all due respect as well, I'd like to kind of tack on one little note. I do okay for myself, and I'm trying to be considerate at other people's price points. But JLCs, in my opinion, are not that expensive. So I ended up getting a discount on this one. I think they're $6,500. I ended up walking out the door at $6,000, and I kind of went on the assumption that everyone else kind of does. If you don't know a lot about JLC, you think, shit, they're going to be fairly spendy. It's the watchmaker's watch. You just assume it's going to be expensive. Don't get me wrong; they do make expensive pieces, no doubt. But I was fairly surprised that you're under $7,000, less than a Speedmaster nowadays. You can slide into a proper, well built, well established, with good pedigree dress watch. And nowadays that's great value in my opinion.
The thing is this, I know the Pontiff always said that JLC is Patek quality at Rolex price point. And I would certainly co-sign that statement. And he used to qualify it saying, but it is in stainless steel. In this day and age, where getting a Rolex at retail price has almost become impossible, where the entry point now on the secondary market is closer to 15K rather than 10, much less 8, you can actually get reversos in precious metal for at that price range, or for less. In fact, there's a lot to be found between 10 to 15K. And in many ways, like you said, I somewhat disagree. I think the watch is not a sports watch, but it can be made sportier and more casual. I mean, I'm still wearing a collared shirt, but I think this is a pretty casual outfit, and the reverso fits right in, if you ask me. But it is the perfect dress watch, because even when it's complicated like this, it stands at 12 millimeter thickness, which means that it slides under most shirt cuffs, long sleeves, or sleeves of even a dinner jacket, right? And
absolutely,
and I know in the watch community on YouTube, we are crazy about changing around straps. JLC itself has a whole range of straps for this watch right now, which has a very particular case shape, of course. And one of the beautiful things about this watch, again, that carries that mark of Gégé Lecoutre being the watchmaker's watchmaker, is that it has a movement that's designed for this case shape, that's formed after this case shape, and that actually fits, right? It fits perfectly. There are no tricks. You can see it especially on a model like this, where you can observe the movement, right? So it's really something special. And the fact that you can get these I mean, in my case, I found a really good deal and I really lowballed, and they weren't supposed to accept it. But anyway, I also got it right under 7K, right? I got it for 65. And it was meant to be, I guess.
Right. And yeah, no, I guess some people think JLC is intimidating to buy. I mean, because I remember JJ said something along the lines of, "Oh, JLC is typically a rich man's watch. People who own JLCs are typically better off than most," and that's probably a true statement for the most part. But like I said, in my opinion, perhaps it's not cheap, but more realistic to be able to obtain, because you're not fighting a two-end war where you're fighting availability and then you're fighting the increase of prices all the time. JLCs kind of hold steady where they're at, and in most cases kind of decline on the used market as well, which makes them, I guess, probably, for better lack of words, and probably more appropriate, a realistic option if you're going to go one and done dress watch.
I mean, yes, you can hardly find a better bargain in the secondary market, right? Once again, if you're buying from the JLC boutique, if you're looking for one of those tribute models with the special dials, it's still a lot of money. It's not as much money as Patek or Vacheron. They're still available, but they will expect you to pay in full and wait for several months to get one of the more hyped up.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, but in the secondary market, really, the world is your oyster. Go out there, try a few on, and find the one that speaks to you. If it doesn't, that's also fine. But if you find the reverso that is right for you, Joe and I are expecting to welcome you to the reverso squad that is becoming quickly a tight-knit group of friends. So the next on the docket is the Seiko Gmt.
Seiko. Oh,
Getting this.
I mean, so everyone knows I'm a massive shit talker, sober or not. I mean, I'm just a massive shit talker in general. However, to be fair, I do typically experience, or at least attempt to experience, the watches that I shit talk on. So I've had Omegas, I've had multiple Omegas, obviously multiple Rolexes, I've had Tag Heuers, I've had Citizen, Spinnaker, a lot of garbage in between. And I've always trash talked Grand Seiko, and I figured, you know what, fuck it, why not buy Grand Seiko, see if it's all hype. Now, I did buy the GMT because of two reasons. One, I didn't want to spend more than $5,000 on a Seiko because, you know, it's Grand Seiko. Two, I've always wanted the Explorer 2, but for obvious reasons, it will never fit me. And the Grand Seiko GMT is the closest thing you can get to an Explorer 2. And I could have had the chance to buy the black dial one with the orange GMT, and it's basically a one-for-one replica. At Delray Watch, and he had it for a good deal, actually. I think he had it 200 under. But I wanted my Seiko to have its own voice as well, so I went with the blue dial, and I bought it at retail, and I did do my research to see if I could get this pre-owned. And every time I seen it on the pre-owned, it was about either 200 over, 500 over. So I said, screw it, I'll just buy it at the boutique. Look, it's going to be one of the very few times where I'm lenient and just, guys, I gotta be honest, guys. I actually do like it for what I use it for. I mean, it's quite literally an abuse watch, honestly. But it does offer balance to my collection currently right now. It's a GMT. It's definitely different from what I would typically put in rotation. And more importantly, I got to experience a taste of Seiko, Grand Seiko, if you will, Now, people will always argue, oh, you bought the cheap model, so yeah, you're naturally going to hate it. Well, in my opinion, your entry level should be a good example of what to expect. Now,
Right.
this may or may not be a fair comparison, but I look at the Aquaterra. The Aquaterra is an entry level Omega. You get a lot of great quality for the amount of money you throw on it.
Mhm.
In my opinion, the Seiko doesn't quite represent on the entry level things. Seiko doesn't represent very well entry level wise, but nonetheless, it's still in the collection for right now, and it still remains to be the bane of my existence.
Look, I mean, there are a number of things that I want to say about this, but I'll make an analogy. When you go to an Italian restaurant, not the Olive Garden, but a proper Italian restaurant, and you want to know if it is any good, you don't go out and order the most expensive dish on the menu. You order the cacio e pepe and make sure that they get the basics right. And what you said about Gran Seiko, I think, is absolutely spot on. If a brand gets it right at its entry level models, at its most affordable models, they will get everything else right too, if you ask me. But of course, with Grand Seiko and Seiko in general, the situation is much more complex. And one of the reasons that really, really I do cherish you, Joe, is because you speak with absolute honesty about all your watches, and there's a lot of contradiction, a lot of conflict, emotions that oscillate, because in many ways you like this watch, you use it, you wear it, yet you cannot stop talking shit about it either. So I
Yeah,
love that. I love that. The Look, if you ask me, one thing that I always found puzzling about Grand Seiko is, with all my love and really attachment to Seiko as a brand, because I do love a lot of Seiko and Seiko 5 watches. I have owned and still own some of them, well, two of them. SKX 007 and SKX 009. When it comes to Grand Seiko, Seiko is great in making reliable, dependable, in a way, rugged, utilitarian watches for the everyday. When they step into that luxury market, I feel they're slacking off on design and innovation a little bit. I don't know why that is. I'm not within the company. I don't have any insider knowledge, but I feel like, the designs for a company of Seiko's pedigree seem to be a hodgepodge of everything but the kitchen sink. Sometimes the bracelet resembles an oyster. Sometimes it resembles like a new age Speedmaster bracelet. This model is clearly a reiteration of Rolex's Explorer 2. So even when you are getting a watch that's well made and in many ways well finished, although that is also debatable. I think there was a lot of hype at some point that exaggerated some of the finishes, binding it to this Japanese mythology. Oh my God, it's like finished in the same way that a katana is
right.
finished, as if you could get something like that, like at that price point. Anyway, so I feel like, that in Grand Seiko too, there's a lot of complication, and I feel like they haven't really established their identity yet. I remember the days when it was still double branded, right? It had too much Seiko going on the dial. Then they removed that extra Seiko because it was Grand Seiko and Seiko in a lot of the models. I think they're still on a path to really establish themselves as something of their own. That's not Seiko, and that's not just another luxury watch. And a lot of the things they do with the dials and finishing is getting them there, but it's taking a while.
Well, one thing I'd also like to add is I think Seiko's got too many hands in the chicken coop. So when you look at it, if you're a newbie and you look at Seiko's lineup, and I mean from point A to point B, at one point in time, you have Seiko Presage, you had King Seiko, Grand Seiko, and Creator all sitting at the same table and all at the different price points. So when you look at it, you take a look at, you know, if I'm a newbie and I take a look at, you know, what Seiko I want to buy, I look at it and say, what the fuck? You know, why is this Seiko, the Seiko Presage, you know, $1,200, and there's a Grand Seiko that looks identical to it in every way, in shape and form, that's $4,500, and then you got the Creator on the way end of the table costing 50 G's. I think Seiko, you know, I think half the problem with Seiko is they need to just merge into either just, you know, like Rolex and Tudor, or like Patek Philippe and Chapek, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Chapek people, you know, Chapek technically has the same heir to the throne as Patek Philippe, which is a little weird and a different story for another time. But I think Seiko just has one too many, like I said, hens in the chicken house, and they just kind of need to clean up the brands a little bit, just to make it simpler for the average enthusiast. Now, I will say this with Grand Seiko, as much as I beat on their subpar finishing on the outside, the dials and the finishing on the indices is, I'll admit, out of this world. It's something special. It's something to behold, and it definitely saves the watch as a whole. It doesn't matter which one you're buying. The dials they're crisp, they're clean. I'll admit it.
Now, I don't wanna overstep any lines here, but would you consider getting rid of this watch and replacing it perhaps with a 5-digit Explorer 2 no holes case with a black dial, for example?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I've always said if I had a 6.5-inch wrist, my collection would be completely different. But but the problem is the way, 15 grand on a pre-owned Polar or pre-owned 40 mil Explorer 2 is 15 grand on a new Explorer 2, and that's a tough pill to swallow. Not to mention, I will say this, with the Grand Seiko, can beat the shit out of it. It's ready to go. Can submerge it in water. I don't have to worry about a damn thing. Again, we come into the argument of if I buy a classic pre-owned Submariner 40, I have to bait it. I have to make sure the seals are all intact. It has to go into service a lot more frequently. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind it if I can get one new enough and at a reasonable price, which, that's very unrealistic nowadays when you think about it.
Yeah. Look, I just wanted to offer that option or reiterate that option because I know I pushed you a few times towards something like that. Because for anyone else, and I have a smaller wrist as well, maybe not as small as yours, and I cannot imagine myself wearing one of the newer Explorer 2s. To me, it's just too large, and I already don't like the proportions of most of the contemporary professional models. But I feel like that would be a great fit for you. It's as much of a watch, if not more, than this. And if you ask me, coming from a more vintage side, some of those Rolex sports models from late 90s and early 2000s, coming from either side of the spectrum, offer the best compromise. And you can argue that is the golden age of Rolex sports watches, in the sense that you have these watches that have solid end links, in many cases the Luminova, so working luminous material on the dial, that wear very rugged, that offer a lot of horological appeal in terms of its reliability and robustness more than any complication or decoration or anything of that sort. Of course, we all know this
right
about Rolex.
I would like to say though, I did think about replacing this one with the updated version, that is currently a spring drive and has basically they redesigned it so it doesn't look like the Explorer 2 because the Grand Seiko community gets pissed when you say that, oh yeah, that looks like a Rolex Explorer 2 replica. Ooh, do
Right.
they lose their shit? But yeah, I almost replaced it, but I don't know if I will or not. I just don't know if I will.
And I mean, look, here's the thing. I think I have nothing against watches at different price points, right? You know, I know my tastes are not humble in any way, but they're also not, usually they don't come outrageously priced. So I find myself more or less still quite convenient in the current market. But then again, I understand that, you know, people have different sorts of budgets. So I like all these different brands that sit with their own appeal at more affordable and accessible price points. But yeah, I don't like it when some of those brands don't offer something their own and end up reproducing something that is already well executed elsewhere.
Right.
And
Right.
of course, this is most obvious in so-called homage watches, but sometimes it crops up in models like this. And Seiko is just too much of a brand, too much of a legacy to do something like this. And you know, Grand Seiko fanboys have their own drive about cases like this. They themselves don't want something that looks like a Rolex. That's what
That's the whole reason they go to Grand Seiko, is because
that's
it's
what
polar opposite.
brand. Yeah. So that's the right choice to redesign the model a little bit so it looks unlike Rolex's Explorer 2. Now we have arrived at one of the important junctures of this collection. Tell me about your Cartier, Joe.
Yes, the Cartier. Yeah, so the Cartier is the hardest watch I've ever had to obtain. The Rolexes are easier to obtain than this damn Cartier. But I just knew I wanted a Cartier. I mean, I toyed with the idea for probably over a year. And I knew I wanted a Cartier. Why? I don't know. I mean, horologically speaking, it's not the greatest watch out there. But I just knew like I said, I needed to have a Cartier, and it works well. And I chose this picture in particular because, as you can see, my suit game is mid tier. Honestly, if I'm being frank here, because my pocket square doesn't match with my tie. I only matched up the designs, which I don't think really worked out in the end. But that's a story for another day. But
It shouldn't match, actually. We'll talk about that another day, but it shouldn't match. That's a huge faux pas. So this is much better than same. But go on.
regardless, anyways. But when I first got to this was the first time I've ever gotten fully dolled up with the Cartier. And ironically enough, this was at New Year's party at the strip club. Anyways, though, I remember looking at the Cartier in this full load. I'm like thinking, like, shit, this watch really does complement well with going back and forth between a dress watch and a casual watch. It's basically everything the JLC can't do. But it just does look a little bit more better in its dress watch form. And then I want to make note that in this photo, I'm wearing the medium-sized Cartier Santos. And a lot of guys will sit back and say, well, which do I go for? Do I go with the large? Do I go with the medium? I took a chance. I took a risk. And because my Cartier dealer is hours away, and I bought the medium, and I do not regret it because, as you can see, it clearly fits me perfectly to a T, maybe even a little big on me, arguably. You could argue, but it's a watch that I feel like everyone should experience. Should everyone have one? No. But I feel like you should experience it at some point because it's just a fun watch. It gets a lot of looks. It gets a lot of compliments. But good luck trying to get one nowadays because they are a pain in the ass to get, and Cartier is a pain in the ass to deal with.
Look, I'll approach it from 2 points. And I think the most important one that we keep forgetting is ultimately, especially in this day and age, a watch is jewelry for men, because we have so many other methods, so many other ways of telling time. At the end of the day, we wear these things as meaningful accessories. So when it comes to brands like Cartier, Bulgari, Chopard, Piaget, I don't have a problem recognizing that in this day and age, they're primarily jewelry brands. They make beautiful objects that you can wear around. Now, some of those brands actually have a certain provenance in horology. They do actually have a history of watchmaking, and Cartier is one of those brands. We talk about all these other brands in such heightened ways, but how many other brands can tell you that they basically have come up with one of the first, if not the first, wristwatch design in the Santos? And how many other brands have at least two iconic, well recognizable models in their lineup, right? That being, of course, Cartier Tank and Cartier Santos. So
Right.
That's one thing that I just have to say about Cartier, right? I like poking fun at you because you take it well, right? Because you have a thick skin. But Cartier is actually a brand that I respect quite a bit. Now, I know our friend Alex, the watchmaker, has certain qualms with
He thinks
the
they're garbage. He
with
thinks
the
he calls them shatters.
with the movement in these watches, but that's again, that's another conversation altogether. Aesthetically, I really appreciate these watches. I appreciate the fact that they have the quick change strap function. And again, it's one of those watches that you have to ideally go to the boutique or go to the dealer and try on, because they come in different sizes and different strap combinations, and they would all sit in their own unique way on your wrist. So you have to see it
Right.
to try
And
it
you
on.
know, I've always said Cartier is the brand that you don't buy it for the movement, you buy it for the name. In the same way you buy Rolex, but the difference is you actually get a decent movement with Rolex, you know?
Yeah. So it's again, we recognize that this, at the end of the day, man's watches, no matter how much we embellish it, are pieces of jewelry, are accessories. Of course, they have a much deeper meaning that we can uh, inject into them if we are able to make them our own, if we're able to integrate them into our own lives. But at the end of the day, who do you turn to make a beautiful material piece that you can wear around? Cartier. It just makes sense.
Right.
Uh, and this
And
new
Cartier
generation,
is probably one of the few brands that not only have they captured the watch enthusiasts, but they've captured the civilians. How many brands out there very few, like you could probably put them all in one hand, have done capturing the watch enthusiasts and the civilians. If you can do both, you've done it right. And very few brands have done that.
it's an iconic piece of design. Look, the people might not know exactly what it is, but people would not only know the name, but they would know this case shape for a certain kind of wristwatch. And again,
Absolutely.
Cartier got it right at least twice, with Tank and with Santos, and I think it's really beautiful. And like you said, it's people who are haters might say it's neither fish nor fowl, but in a way, I think that's what makes watches like the Reverso, like the Santos, that yes, they're primarily a dress watch, but you can dress them down. You can wear them in casual environments. You just have to know how to carry them around and how to be a little more conscious about them. And we can do that in any number of ways. Changing straps is just one way.
Absolutely.
So finally, we come to what is perhaps the jewel on the crown. Oh no, not yet. We have one more piece.
Yeah, this is where we, this is where we get interesting. This is where we get interesting and fun. So this one, I'm going to try and keep it shortened here, but this one technically could be a lengthy story. So I've always wanted the Explorer 2, and the backup was a Submariner. And I always wanted the modern version of Submariner. Ever since I seen it on my sales manager's wrist, I always knew I wanted one. His was a date. And funny story, he traded his off for a Tudor Black Bay 58.
Yeah.
Fucking retard. But then again, that was during like that peak of COVID, so I'm not going to judge 100%. He might have done it for financial reasons. But anyways, so I remember when Marco got his Submariner, and I believe his is exactly the same as mine. Was rather the no date 40 mil. I think his was 2019, I believe 2019 or 2020. I can't remember. Anyways. He got his, and then shortly afterwards, I was inspired to get my own Submariner, and I bought a pre-ceramic because I thought the pre-ceramic would fit me better, and it does. But I paid, what the fuck was it? I paid $12.50 for it, no box, no papers. And they gave me I bought it from an AD, not my boutique. So I bought it from the AD, and they gave me a 24-hour return, no strings attached. So I drove all the way home with it, and I think I was just looking for a reason to back out of it. And I felt the bees will kind of move around a little bit more freely. When you push down on it, the whole thing would just pop up. You can still do it with these, but it's not nearly as aggressive. So I said, I drove all the way back up there the next day, and I took it back and returned it. Said, nope, I can't do it. And he said, all right. And a few weeks later, they had 3 Submariners in there. I got the oldest of the group. I think the other one, I think 2 of them were 2020, 2019, and this one's 2015. Mm-hmm. And I bought the 2015, and this is where it gets funny, looking back on it nowadays. And I remember doing the unboxing on Marco's show, and Archie came on the stream, and to be fair, we both had been drinking pretty aggressively that night. And I showed Archie that at the time I had the Submariner, the Seamaster, the Speedmaster, and that was it, I think. I can't remember. But, Archie goes off on this drunken rant. He's like, I can see your soul. You have no soul. Your collection's empty. It's a poor person's collection. And, that was the first time me and Archie had, like, straight beef with each other. So I always kind of think about that when I think about this watch is, it's a soulless Submariner. But I like it. It's a little big on me, but I didn't mind overpaying for the fucking thing. If I do get a chance on the 41, I probably will swap because the 41 does fit me a lot better. But man, I really do love this sub. It's the no date. It's just cleaner. It's a lot better. I remember my sales manager found out when I got the no date. He said, "God damn!" He said I should get a no date myself. It's just a stellar watch. I use it for just about everything. And it takes its beatings and keeps on moving. So I like it. I love it.
Look, I mean, in many ways, it is the most predictable luxury watch. It's Rolex. It's a sub, but there's something unbeatable about the simplicity, about the symmetry, and about the just sheer ruggedness of that design. The black on black, the fact that it is a stripped down 3-hander. It speaks back to, I think, a lot of Rolex's history, even in this day and age of ceramic bezels and chromolite luminous material and the larger cases and whatever, the maxi dials, the maxi cases, so on and so forth. This model, I think, has so much to say about what Rolex has been for a good part of the 20th century, even if it is from the 21st. You can see all the family resemblance. You can peek through all the brand history, all the design language, and there's nothing that represents Rolex better than a Submariner, if you ask me. Of course, I am absolutely partial. I am a minimalist when it comes to dial design. The Grand Date is my most complicated and most quirky watch, because it has this asymmetric thing going on the dial. But otherwise, I love this sort of plain dial that's not even disrupted by a date window. You can hardly do any better than that. And I know that at certain points in time, the day date was, of course, the most prestigious model. Nowadays, Daytona seems to have superseded it and taken its place. But for me, when you say Rolex, Submariner is the first model that comes to mind. And as predictable as it is, when you have a no-date Submariner of your own, it's impossible for you not to understand what this watch means for the brand and for the history of horology and for the history of a luxury sports watch.
Absolutely, and it's everyone's first luxury watch, right? I mean, it's when you get this watch, I mean, you feel like a fucking big shot, honestly. I remember my sales manager all the time. He would purposely wear his watch probably a little bit looser. I'm pretty sure he threw an extra link in. So every time he'd come out of the office, he'd always be like shaking his wrist with his Submariner. Every time, every time you looked at him, always shaking the wrist, readjusting the sub. It's something about it. It's not a fuck you piece, but it's definitely look at me. I've got money.
Yeah, of course. And let's not fool ourselves, right? I know some people play that act of false humility by choosing the supposedly neglected pieces from the contemporary lineup. But at the end of the day, if you are wearing a Rolex on a daily basis, you do have a narcissistic edge to your personality. You do want people to look at you. You do want them to notice you. So right. You have to, at some point, you have to let go of the chip on your shoulder, and you have to own it. Yes, I am wearing a Rolex Submariner, and it's not fake. And I paid a lot of money for it from my hard-earned cash. So fucking what? I love it.
It's almost like a license to become a douchebag.
Look, I mean, people know me enough already. I don't need a license to be a douchebag. But yeah, hey, if it gives me a free hand, I will abuse it to the bitter end. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I do. Chunk says I do prefer a no-date sub over the date version. Again, to me, it's about symmetry. It's about simplicity. And it's about also affect. It's about emotions, because that is the watch that I inherited from my father. That's the watch that my father left behind for me.
Right.
So it means a lot. It means a lot to me.
And it's still the lesser of the two when it comes to the general public. That you could be wearing this watch, and maybe a few people like I was in AT&T one time, and the dude figured out what I was wearing. I was wearing a Submariner, and we were talking about Apple Watches, and I'm still considering buying one, but separate conversation. He said, "Man," he said, "I don't know." He said, he jokingly said, "I wouldn't even be looking at Apple Watches. I'd rather have your watch." But the date version is the most iconic. People just know. People who don't even know a damn thing about luxury, just when they see it, you see the black dial and you see the white, just that's a sub. As with the note date, they kind of question, like, is it a sub? Isn't it? I'm not sure. Maybe. And, I think I do kind of like that now. It keeps people guessing sometimes.
Right. I mean, I remember again when Arch had the no date sub, and I think at that time it was the 14060, 14060.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying that he would basically pull on people's leg by saying, oh, I just couldn't get enough money together to get the date version, so whatever, I got this. And I think, again, people don't recognize it as easily, and especially if you wear it. Sometimes, since I live in a big city and you don't always want to attract attention, all the attention, you don't want to attract the bad attention. Let's put it this
Right.
way. When you wear a no date sub on a leather strap, on a rubber strap, it takes on almost a different character. It doesn't become unrecognizable as such, but it can fly under the radar, and it can still be a beautiful, sporty, eye-catching watch, but in a much more understated way. And I think
Absolutely.
the no date has more potential in doing that than the date, because once you add again, there's so many aspects of Rolex's design language encrypted in this watch. You throw in the Cyclops there, it becomes too recognizable already. But
Right.
the no date has the potential of being something else while carrying on that legacy. I love it. I love this watch, Meech. So now we come to the last piece in the collection, Meech. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. Tell me about the watch that I like calling the root beer in the collection, even though there is a GMT now that they present as such.
So yeah, the Yacht Master is a bit of a lengthy story, and I'll try and get through it as fast as I can here. But when I first bought my Explorer, they had a chocolate Yacht Master sitting in the display case. And for shits and giggles, I said, may I try that one on? And they gave it to me, and that was pretty much it. It was love at first sight. The way it hugged the wrist, it was beautiful. The way the rose gold and the chocolate blend, mocha blend, it was absolutely phenomenal. Especially with my skin tone, and I was wearing the same black jacket that I am now. I see myself in the mirror, and immediately I started thinking of all the events. The strip clubs, the wine events, the wine tasting, the meetings that I would typically attend to. I just seen myself wearing that watch all the time, and I at the time I asked myself, how much is this watch? And they said it was $15,580 or whatever the fuck it was. And at the time I was thinking, Jesus fucking Christ, no way. But ever since I got to try on that watch, it haunted me for the better part of the year. Honestly, I would wake up in the morning thinking about it, like, how can I obtain that watch? I'd go to sleep thinking, man, it'd be great to have that watch. And finally, one day I was laying in bed and said, fuck it, I'm going for that watch. I needed my collection. Even if it's the last Rolex I'll ever own. So fast forward to the end of 2020. I walked in. Well, no, actually, no. I called my AD up in the cities, and I said, "Do you have a chocolate Yacht Master?" And they said, "Mr. Kramer, we've got one left here for you." I said, "Great." I put a deposit down, and they said, "I'll probably be up in the next couple of days to collect." Then I thought, you know what? I should call my girls up. And the reason why I call my girls is because the staff is completely female, with the exception of probably the owner's kid. I'm pretty sure it's her son. Anyways, I called up my girls and I said, "Do you have a Yacht Master on hand?" Because they're closer, obviously. And they said, "Yes, we have one in stock." I said, "Great." I said, "Is it chocolate dial?" She said, "Unfortunately, no. It's black dial." I was like, shit, I've never seen a black dial before. And I said, would you be willing to kind of compete here? I said, the AD up in the cities has a Yacht Master as well, same configuration. I did kind of do a little bit of a fib, and they said, well, let me talk to the manager. And they came back. She called me up and said, we'll give you $300 off. It's not a whole lot. I said, okay, all right. And I called up the AD up in the cities, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, sir, we can't discount these. These are highly desirable pieces. They're hard to get. At the time, they weren't, honestly. Like 2 months later, I went up to the cities, and they had like 10 of them in the display case. Anyways, I went to see my girls to see this watch in person, and I fell in love. I think it's the perfect blend of it. Well, call me a little insecure, but I think it's the more masculine version of the Yachtmaster two-tone. And it just works a little bit better with the blacked out. It doesn't put it all the way out to the deep end of dress. And it's a little bit more relaxed. It makes that red lettering pop. And I said, here's the deal. I said, as a farmer, you pay all your bills at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And I said, I want this watch. No doubt about it. I said, how long can you keep a deposit for? And they sat back and said, we'll work with you. How much can you drop right now? I said, I can drop about $4,000 right now. They said, we'll put it in layaway. You just come in every time you want to make a payment, we'll give it to you. I said, all right. So a week before Christmas, I said to myself, you know what? Screw it. I took a little money out of investments, and I bought this watch because I wanted it for Christmas, just in time for Christmas. And funny enough, that was the last Christmas that I had with my father. And a few months later, he would pass away. I mean, a few weeks later, he would pass away in January. And I wore this watch at his funeral. So this watch probably has the most emotional attachment. I mean, even more than my Explorer. And I've always said if I had to sell all my watches, God forbid, the Yachtmaster would be the one that stays behind. And I've had some really incredible moments with this watch. I always call it my best and worst luck with this watch because, I've had some pretty shitty situations with this watch. At the same time, though, I've gotten pretty lucky in more ways than one. There's an interesting strip club story about this that involves this watch. It's actually pretty interesting, but for another time. But one time, one night I remember wearing this watch, and these two older gals who were probably in their 30s, I mean, fucking knockouts, they noticed my watch, and long story short, I ended up taking it back to my hotel with me. I don't know why, but I mean, just because they noticed the watch, I mean, I got lucky that night. So, like I said, it's the best of both worlds with this watch. It's definitely a watch that I really enjoyed. It's my most expensive watch. It's a watch that says, fuck you, look at me, I've got money, you don't matter. It's a watch that's probably the most comfortable to me. It's the watch that I've had the most attachment to, and it's the watch that I absolutely lusted after and obsessed with. No other watch has actually captured me the way the Yachtmaster did.
Look,
it's just beautiful. It's perfect.
Like you said, best of both worlds, right? To me, that's what actually describes a two-tone Rolex. And let me try to explain, because obviously a gold Rolex on a full gold bracelet, it embodies the Feikoff watch to such an extent that the Pontiff has already demonstrated video after video. It just brings out something else from your character. On the other hand, and again, it speaks very strongly, right? When you carry that kind of watch, people notice it, and it brings all kinds of attention, and not always good. But a two-tone watch, because of the contrast in the material, right? Even as it has on the outer edges the ruggedness, the robustness, and the reliability of stainless steel, the glimmer that is introduced by the precious metal that runs through, in a way, because of that contrast, is even more eye-catching. It's even more look at me than a full gold watch, if you know what I mean. And you have already experienced it in a way, because a two-tone watch, in a way, attracts more attention because of that contrast than the warmth of a full gold watch that just reflects the light in a slightly more understated way. This shines in all manner of ways that draws the eye.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think they're really, really I remember when I turned the bezel, I was so used to, these cheap ass watches with the spinning creative, you have to really fucking crank on them. The Seikos, and then I remember the first time I turned the bezel on this in the store, I thought I fucking broke it. Like in my head, I'm like, oh fuck, I broke it because I I put my finger on there and I felt the thing just kind of shift this way because it's so buttery smooth the way it just moves. I'm like, oh shit. And then of course, like one of the girls kind of read my face. He's like, oh, don't worry, it's bi-directional. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So it's fun to do it, spin it back and forth both ways. It's always kind of a slap in the face with the Submariner guys because they have to crank the thing all the way around it. Where with the Yachtmaster, you can just, tweak it back up there. It's just one of those cool little unique things. It's the little things that you find interesting with the Yachtmaster.
Now, I mean, I do prefer this watch with the chocolate dial because, again, it reminds me of my root beer, the nipple dial, Clint Eastwood, so to speak. But I think, again, this is just beautiful. I know some people have very strong feelings against that particular bezel. They find it too big. They find it too fat. I think it really distinguishes Yachtmaster from a Submariner, from a Sea Dweller. I think it just fits, and especially on the two-tone, it has to be big. It has to
Right.
speak louder. So I think it's a great fit for this watch. This is, to me, again, I love the pink gold Yachtmaster 40 on the Oyster Flex, but the two-tone with the chocolate dial also has a lot of appeal to me.
And I've thought about buying the chocolate dial and just putting this one in a box because I don't wear it very often. I mean, I enjoy wearing it. Don't get me wrong. I still wear it to questionable places, but I don't think. I mean, it would kill me if something kind of if something happened to this with the glass cracked or the bezel got smashed or God forbid it gets stolen. Because technically, yeah, I think, like I said, it's more of the emotional part of it where this was the last watch that I wore the last day with my father. So I think about occasionally buying the chocolate dial. And I still love the chocolate dial as well. But I also kind of run into the notion of like, do I really want two watches that are pretty much identical except different dials? I don't know. And the Yachtmasters, like I said, it's the only watch that I've really lusted after. And every now and then I'll toy with the idea of, I look at the chocolate dial and I see like, ooh, damn, that's tempting. Because it's just a fucking cool watch. But I don't know if I would ever buy a second one. Maybe, but.
And I love the way
anytime soon.
Right? This is the kind of watch you want to put on when you want to get into trouble, when you want to, in a sticky situation. Joe, this has been such a pleasure for me. I love talking to you, but to talk to you about your collection, your personal collection, in all these details, just gives me a lot of joy, and I look forward to talking more about watches with you and learn more about you as a person as well. Would you mind if I shared the link and we invited some other people to see if they would like to join the conversation?
Yeah, sure. By all means, bring on the punters.
Punters love Big Meech.
Little interesting story with this Yachtmaster. My buddy who sold his or traded in his sub for a tutor, he asked me if I would ever sell this watch. And I said, yeah, I'll sell it to you. And I said, I'll even cut you a deal. I'll sell it to you for 15 grand flat, And he basically started, complaining. He said, 15 grand? He said, I can buy 2 Rolexes for that price. I'm like, well, it's not a Submariner, my guy. It's a Yachtmaster. It's the rich man's Submariner. Oh, then he gets all cranky at me.
Yeah, well, I mean, now, I don't know if he has been following the market, but now which 2 Rolexes he would buy, I wonder.
He wants my Explorer. He really wants my Explorer bad. He hit me up. He's hit me up quite a few times and said, ready to sell your Explorer?" And I said, "Well, why not get the 36?" He said, "I don't want the damn 36." He said, "I want the 39." So, and honestly, the 39 would fit his wrist a lot better. I know for a while he was considering Panerai, but I don't know if he could pull it off. Maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, let's see if anyone would like to come in. Otherwise, we can wrap up quite soon. Um, do you would you like to, because you said you got yourself in some sticky situations with this watch as well. If any of these are not too personal and not too risque, would you like to share one of them with the punters?
Yeah. So I like to. Well, obviously, I like my drinky drinks. So I remember though. Usually, so the bars that I usually go to, they're not exactly hometown, but they're not all over the cities. But you can always gauge people around you when you drink. And this guy kept looking at me. And I'm like, oh shit, you just know, right? You just know something's amiss. And he keeps looking at me while I'm enjoying my drink. I'm talking to my mate, and he starts to come over. And I slowly leaned in and said, "Hey mate," I said, "You got my back, right?" I said, "In case shit goes sideways." And he kind of already pieced it all together. He said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't worry about it." And this guy comes over and he sits down, and initially he was kind of mild mannered, and then he kind of looks at my watch and he fucking takes his greasy little pudgy finger and he places it right on the crystal. He kind of like if you were to jab, if you were to just kind of smash one of your keyboard buttons, which pisses me off. And of course, at this point, I'm about 12 to 15 drinks in. Everyone's a bit testy. It's like 2 a.m, so people are tired and hungry. He said, "Where'd you get off wearing this?" I'm like, "What?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "This," and of course I'm pulling my arm away from him, and he
Wait,
keeps
what?
trying to kind of poke at it.
You were cutting off. What did he say?
He said, "Where do you get off wearing this?" Like
Oh,
like it was insulting to him. I said, "Dude," I said, "with all due respect," I said, "Piss off," I said, and he said, "What kind of brand is this?" I said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "Oh, I bet you that's fake gold." He said, "You're a fraud," and he's going off on this, and
mm,
he makes this. I wouldn't call it a grab, but kind of like this weird, awkward lean. And my mate, he's pushing 290. All right, he's not exactly the healthiest, but my mate gets up out of his chair and he picks him up and just throttles him over the bar. And of course, the bouncers all look, my buddy's pointing out, like, "Hey, he was coming on to us, and there's two couples behind us and saying, yeah, he's harassing them." I don't know what his problem was, but for some reason he had it out that I was wearing this two-tone watch, and he had personal beef with me, I guess, and signed on spot, and I don't know what the problem was there, but yeah, I mean, when you get around that time of at night and people have had their drinks, you can't really trust a whole lot of people. I'm sure it was just a random thing that kind of set him off. But you know, as that line in American Psycho goes, "Don't touch the Rolex. Don't touch the Rolex." So,
Rolex.
but yeah, it was one of those weird times, right? It got a little tense. I mean, so yeah, it attracts not only the wenches but the goblins as well.
Right. So I mean that's the thing when I said a two-tone watch is in many ways more eye-catching than most other luxury watches, and it will draw all sorts of attention, and it's not always the welcome kind of attention. It's not always good attention. And I'm glad you were able to navigate through that situation. The one thing that I want to ask as we are wrapping up our discussion is to bring you back to that beautiful shot you have with the watch box and ask you the important question, which Mr. Stern also proposed. Are you ever going to pull the trigger on the Tony Soprano special, the
Oh shit.
Hypebeast 36?
That's the question I go back and forth with continuously, because I think JJ said it best. He said, I don't want to wake up one day and look at my watch box and it's all Rolex and realize that I'm bored, right? Um, and I think my collection is pretty much borderlining that. The Tony Soprano special, I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. I get it. You know, it's 36 grand. No, excuse me, 32 grand for the 36. Um, I'd absolutely love the watch, but at the same time, you know, I am kind of conflicted on two ends. One, it's a lot of fucking money to toss around. Two, like JJ said, I don't want to look at my watch box and see it's all Rolex, right? I just don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And for 32 grand, if in a perfect world, if you will, what can you get? You can get a Vacheron overseas. You can get a rose gold, pretty close, I think. Actually, it's pretty much the same price if I remember right. Maybe a little bit more. You can get a rose gold Cartier Santos medium. You can get a Patek 5196. Well, you can't anymore since they're discontinued, but you can get something in Patek for around 32 grand. You can go so many different ways with 30 plus grand that
Yes.
I think about, you know, as much as I'd like to have the Day-Date 36, I think if I didn't have the Milgauss or the Submariner, I'd say yes, I'd get it guaranteed, no doubt. But given that I've got 4 Rolexes already in rotation,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm ready yet. I don't know if I really want to go that route yet. I think I will get it at some point. It just won't be anytime soon. I think I can see myself getting a Patek or a Vacheron or something else before another Rolex.
Look,
The only thing the only thing that would happen is if I got the Cermet, I would trade in the Cermet for a Day-Date 36. I think that's the fastest way it would happen.
um, look, that was a great way um, to put it, in the sense that, you know, I know a lot of people say an all Rolex collection is boring. I wholeheartedly disagree, but you shouldn't be bored with your own collection, right? Because at the end of the day, we buy these things, we collect these things for ourselves. You know, devil may care about anyone else's opinion, but you don't want to look at your watch box and lose interest in your own watches, lose interest in your own collection. And if getting yet another Rolex as an idea uh, already bores you, probably it's not the right choice. So to just conclude, what would be one watch you could see yourself getting next? What would be the lucky number 7? Joe?
Yeah, no, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, what would be number 7? That is a good question. And you know, I don't know, and people already stated this the obvious. I don't know what I want. That's the problem. Like I said, I've there's only one watch that I've actually knew this is what I want. This is what I'm going to get it. This is how I'm going to get it, and that's the Yachtmaster. Every other watch has been. I knew it was in the cards, but it was just always like, okay, the opportunity rose, I can get it. Now, funny enough, if the AD were to call me today, or no, if the girl were to call me today and say, "Hey, we have your back row ready," I'm going to get the back row, no doubt. But if I had to choose from another brand, I would probably. And the problem is with my wrist is where I have to be conscientious of my wrist size. So I have to understand my limitations. I think I could see myself going to Paddock, honestly. I could see myself, not because I actually like Paddock, it's just because it would be a notch in my resume. I could say I own a Paddock at 26 years of age. I'd probably dump the Paddock a few months down the road, if I'm being honest. But I think that would be the most realistic play, since I really can't fit into anything else. Like, I would love a Speedmaster. I would love an Aquaterra. I would love to have a Vacheron overseas. I would love to have an Audemars Piguet. I would love to have a Zenith. But the problem is, all these are pushing 41 or 42 mils.
Hmm. So you would, maybe it's a Patek Calatrava that you would get as a dress watch next.
Yeah, and if I got the Calatrava, the JLC would be gone.
Hmm. Chili Badger says, try Lange.
How do I say this? Lange, I've got no beef against Lange, but I would
Okay.
never buy one. I think they're beautiful. I think pound for pound, I mean, arguably they can go toe to toe with Paddock on their entry level. But I think everyone's got that one watch brand that they like it. They got nothing against it, but they'll never buy one. For my buddy, it's an Omega Speedmaster. He likes the Omega Speedmaster. He respects it. He loves it. But he just said, I'll just never buy one. He said, it's not because of a financial issue. It's just I don't see myself ever actually pulling the trigger on one. And I'm the same way with Lange. Lange make beautiful designs. They're very limited, very exclusive. They're very wealthy. I just, even if I had the money to pull together, I don't see myself buying one.
I can understand that. For me, it's the Speedmaster as well, in the sense that it is one watch that I respect quite a bit. I understand the appeal. It has all the history, all the provenance. It has a great movement. In fact, it has a few great movements in its history. And it's the man on the moon. It's a chronograph, so it ticks off so many boxes. The black on black design. It's a beautiful watch, but it just doesn't do it for me. I would never get one. But I do understand the idea that a lot of people fall for it almost immediately and at least cycle it once through their collection. Yeah, people were asking, BC is asking specifically, is anyone doing the reverse, which is going in the other direction to size down the collection. I'm trying to get down to a one and done. And I think in many ways you said it, but what would be out of this collection? What would be the watch that you could settle down with if you had to get rid of everything else?
Yeah, Master, 100%. But to make it interesting, because it actually is an interesting point. Because I face a double-edged sword, right? So the old saying is, one, you should never sell your first luxury watch. Two, you should never sell your first Rolex, right? And given the Yacht Master, my connection with it, I would, let's just say if I didn't have it, the Explorer I would keep because, like I said, it's my first Rolex ever. And you just don't get rid of your first Rolex, and if you don't have to, don't get rid of your first luxury watch.
Yeah, I can see that. It's hard to let go of any of these watches, especially when you have these 7 beautiful pieces as you do. And it just hurt me to even hear the suggestion that you would get rid of the Reverso if you were to get another dress watch. In addition to the Calatrava, Mr. Stern, Adopt Me Please, recommends Vacheron Traditionnel 38 millimeter, best dress watch, 3-hand bar, none. Will fit you perfectly.
I did look into it, and my only complaint. This is a very first world problem complaint is it just wouldn't look good on anything else other than the leather strap. And if I'm dropping that much money, I'd like to be able to kind of play around with the straps a little bit, but at the same time, yeah, I mean it's arguably. I mean there is no argument. It's by a fact better than a JLC ever could be. And I only want one watch on leather because again, I take in my environment in Minnesota where it's humid. Leather watch straps are just not the thing to wear. And I'd only like to keep one official dress watch on hand. while I like the JLC, if I'm going to go for the higher pedigree, there's no point in having two dress watches on hand. For me, anyways.
No, I get it. I get it, certainly. Thomas, I was actually about to close, but I would love to host you in the after show right after Archie's today. But I think that's an awkward time for you. I'll bring you in to conclude, just so we can celebrate Joe a little bit.
Yeah, Joe, thank you, Lord. Yeah, Joe, what cracking collection you've got there. I mean, I would say the one watch you've got to keep is the Yachtmaster two-tone, because you wore that to your dad's funeral, and I would say the Explorer being your first Rolex, that doesn't matter, but the sentimentality and the sentimental value and the nostalgia that you hold with the Yachtmaster definitely has to stay with you. That's the Big Meech watch. Yeah, the Big Mech watch.
Yeah, of course.
It's similar to Big Meech. The Clint Eastwood, which Thomas actually loves so much.
I love that. That's my favorite watch you've got, Lord. Yeah, definitely.
The Root Beer, that's the first watch that I got for myself. That's my first Rolex. That's my first luxury watch that I purchased. But if I were to
condense it,
pare down everything to a single watch, if I had to or if I wanted to, it has to be the 4-digit sub. And you can make all sorts of aesthetic arguments, utilitarian arguments, but at the end of the day, it's the emotional connection that I have to that watch. It's what binds me to my father, who has passed away so many years ago now.
Yeah.
It's one of the most precious things that he left to me, and it keeps,
absolutely given to you.
Right? It's no one can take that away from me. They would have to pry it from my dead hands. For
absolutely sure. Inherited by your father, and also the JLC Big Meech. I mean, that's a classy watch. That one, such a classy watch. Like Lord's getting into the JLCs at the moment, but I must say, when I saw that earlier on, right at the beginning of the stream, I thought, wow, yeah, really great. But for me, the Big Meech watch is the Cartier. That's the watch. That's the watch I know you by. That's the watch I know you by, the Santos, and that's the one. I mean, I'm a Milgauss man myself because I've got one myself, but I would say Milgauss, but I can't. I just have to say it's the Cartier. It's the Meech watch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about his collection, that I can see his signature and I can see part of his personality in each and every one of those watches. So it hurts me to even think of the possibility of Joe getting rid of one or two of these in any way. But it's an interesting thought experiment, of course.
It would be extremely hard to get rid of the Cartier as well, because you know what? There's so much glitter on it and whatnot. I mean, it's impossible to get rid of that stuff.
I was surprised to see a Grand Seiko as well, but I'm happy to see one because they don't get enough love, I don't think, Grand Seiko. But I quite like the brand as myself, but
they certainly don't get enough love from me. Trust me, even if you own one.
Fucking no, I hate the fucking thing.
Thomas, so lovely to drop by. I know it's
thank you very much, Lord.
It's a very awkward time for you, but if you can join the stream later in the day, which will come after the Pontiff stream is finished, I would love to have you there again. Joe, thank you so much for giving me the privilege to review your collection. It was a great conversation. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for joining. Thank you, Thomas, for
great stream, Lord.
I really appreciate all of you. If you like the content, please like and subscribe and tell everyone else. If you want to suggest a book to review, a watch to examine, the history of a brand that you would like me to delve into, please send that to the email address there attached to the PayPal. I'm still doing these reviews for free until the end of the month of March. So get in there while you can. After that, I will start charging for it. But for now, I'm just enjoying the privilege of being able to create this great content with some of the most interesting characters in the Archieverse. So thank you, everyone. Again, if you want to contribute in any way before I get monetized, you can PayPal me, you can Cash App me, or you can click on any of the Amazon links that I have in my other videos where I talk about certain books. And if you make that purchase, it helps me to become an associate, and that's a path towards monetization for me. But I appreciate all of your contribution. Thank you so much. I will see you in the AC3 stream. Goodbye until then.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.